I guess if you're gonna overcome Alabama, the best way to overcome Alabama is to not win your conference and to get in the national championship.
Look, you can't out Bama until you backdoor into the playoff without winning the SEC. Welcome to My God a Podcast. I'm Jim Wood. In this episode, John Powell and I review Georgia's loss to Alabama in the SEC Championship. As always, remember to check out store.mygodapodcast.com to see our latest merch. And you can follow us on social media at My God a Podcast. Finally, if you like what you hear, please subscribe, rate, 5 stars obviously, and review the show. If you leave us a review, you just might hear it on an upcoming episode. Now, let's join the conversation in progress. First time we've reviewed a Georgia loss in a while.
I was about to say this year.
First time this year, obviously, yeah.
Yeah.
Not since Florida last year. So kind of forget what it's like. I kind of forgot what it was like to talk after one of these.
That's what happens when you have the nation's longest winning streak snapped in epic fashion. I think we were on a 16-game winning streak, and now we're back to zero.
Yes, but why don't we start with? But we're in the playoff. We're still alive. So I want to make sure that I think it's the most important thing of all. I'll say, like, when Oklahoma State lost to Baylor early in the day on Saturday, like at that point, it kind of felt like the SEC championship was already just for seeding. I felt like Bama was in regardless, because even if we had won, honestly, it probably just flips 1 and 3. Bama drops to 3 because the fourth team, number 5 with the rankings out is Notre Dame, right? Unless maybe Baylor jumps up from 6 to 4 or something like that. I don't see that happening. So kind of feels like the game was for seeding anyway. And I guess my overarching thought on the game is we had the margin for error. We could afford to lose, and we played like that, unfortunately.
Yeah. I would say that we definitely didn't do the things that we needed to do. And I don't know. I know that there's this conspiracy theory out there, and I won't say who or what hosts may or may not have theories of these things. I'm not saying his name rhymes with Jim Good. No, I don't know. If you were honest, like, I think that everybody wanted to win that game. Like,
oh yeah.
They had all the motivation to win, to get a number of monkeys off their backs, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you have the type of game, if I were to look at the box score and go back and tell you, hey Jim, pre-game, Stetson Bennett is going to throw it 48 times. Oh, and by the way, he's going to have 2 interceptions.
Right.
And we're going to turn the ball over 2 times on downs. We're going to have 5 trips to the red zone and come away with 3 points, I think it was, or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And you were to look at that all in a vacuum and just say, hey, predict a score. I mean, if anything, this would seem like a fairly merciful result.
Yes. The only thing, so it's funny because I was going to give you one of those what if I told you things and conceal some information and tell you, as we're looking into the future from the past, that you're not allowed to ask clarifying questions because I know what you would ask. But it's just like, if you flip that around and I told you Stetson Bennett was going to throw for 340 yards and 3 touchdowns, you would have felt pretty good. However, I know you, and you would have said, but what's his completion percentage?
Well, all right, so let's look at that. Let's look at the offense, right? Let's talk about the offense since we're talking about Stetson, which, frankly, this game lives in. We knew that this game was going to live and die on Stetson and a couple of other areas that I was personally looking for.
Well,
Um,
can I stop you really quick? One thing I do want to counter, because
okay,
something we talked about, because like you said something in our preview, and then you kind of backed off of it when I pushed you, like because you said Stetson had to have the best game of his career. I questioned that. I think we ultimately kind of felt like he didn't have to have the best game of his career, but he had to not have a bad game, right?
correct.
Okay,
I
okay,
think
sorry,
I think
that's
at
all.
the I think at the end, if we were looking at it, like he had to have an error-free, like turnover-free game is kind of what we were looking for.
Mm-hmm.
If if he doesn't throw those interceptions, um, it's a much different game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
Let's
fair.
be honest. Um, the interception to Bowers that he had to Bowers, like you could probably blame that on the receiver not finishing his route. But even if he was to complete his route, like that's a tough completion to ask Bowers to make because the
Mm.
defender is all as the defender is all over him.
Yes.
So and we had a couple of things like that. Like you could also go back and look at, you know, if Bowers had actually finished the catch on that touchdown pass that was broken up in the end zone, which holy cow, what a bang bang play that was from the Bama defense.
Yeah.
Um, you know, a couple of other things that we were looking for, you know, from the well, I'll talk about the defense in a second, but just looking at the offense, like I mean, if we were all kind of expecting that Bowers was going to have a great game, and he
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
I mean, 139 yards receiving from a true freshman tight end in the biggest stage in the biggest stage in the world
Yeah.
is just phenomenal.
I think it's fair to say that was his best game he's had, especially considering who we were playing. 10 catches, 139 yards, and a touchdown. 53 of those 139 yards were after the catch, including,
Yeah.
I mean, that last, so on his touchdown, I mean, that was a grown man play. I mean, he caught it in traffic and just ran over somebody and broke away and scored. Um,
Hmm.
that was incredible. That got me out of my seat, kind of believing that maybe it wasn't over yet, even though it was. But whatever.
Yeah, dude, he was running over people.
Yeah, yeah.
um,
Definitely tweeted out "My God, a freshman" from the podcast when he did that. At any rate,
I mean, so I mean, I honestly like we were tied going into halftime. We could dissect the what happened on the last series before halftime and how the defense gave that up.
mm-hmm.
And again, we will talk about the defense, but like if we can hold them either on that possession or hold them on the possession coming out of the half, again, it's a totally different ball game. We got down
Yeah,
14 very quickly after halftime, and it's almost like our offensive philosophy completely changed to that point, and we completely panicked and started. We were down fourth down and fourth and goal or whatever, and we decided to go for it. It was like 4th and 9, I think it was.
mm-hmm.
Um, and we decided to go for it. And the play that we decided to go for it on was just like it was literally blown assignments everywhere. Like we did not have the right look for the defense that was coming at us. And Stetson was running from his life as soon as the ball was snapped, and he had to like just barely throw it out there. I have a feeling that Bowers ran the wrong route because Kirby was yelling at him after that play.
Mm-hmm.
He was in Brock's ear,
Yeah,
which God bless his heart. Like Brock Bowers, very like pretty much like put the team on his back for
yeah,
large chunks of this game.
yeah,
Um, he was bailing us out left and right. The tight ends were bailing us out left and right, which is, you know, preseason. If you'd have told us that we were going to have three tight ends with catches and one of them was going to have 140 yards in the SEC championship, you'd be like, "Oh my god, that's exactly what I want." The only bad news is that we didn't have a whole lot of receivers. Like, I mean, I guess I should take that back. We had a lot of receivers. We just didn't have the receivers performing as well as others. Like, for example, Lad McConkey, you know, he had the touchdown catch, right? Well,
mm-hmm.
he was targeted 3 times, but he only ran like 9 routes or something like that. So
Yeah,
like he was on the field 12 plays or something like that, and he only ran 9 routes. Like or sorry, only ran like 3 routes or something like that. I can't remember what the
mm-hmm.
exact stats were, but like he was on the field a lot, but he was only running passing routes a handful of times and
Yeah,
was not targeted very much at all. I mean, there's that kind of you know Pickens was on the field and was targeted more times, which seems strange to me. Like in retrospect, like I get it, he's a game-breaking receiver, but it's also his first game back off of injury, and we were only having a couple of packages of plays for him,
Mhm.
that kind of thing. And it's like there's definitely some questions that should be asked of the offense. We get away
Uh,
from the run, get away
yeah.
from the run too early. Like you and I, I think you're probably the biggest proponent of this. Is I wish that we would just have stuck with James Cook and Zeus. Um, just stick
Yeah.
with White and Cook, and let's see what happens. Because early on, there were quick outs. We were doing quick passes out to Cook, and they
Hmm.
were working, and they
Yeah.
worked later in the game too. So like, let's just keep rolling with what works.
We got away from what was working, I would say, for sure in the third quarter. So, at the end of the first quarter, or let me put it this way: so we scored a touchdown in the first play of the second quarter. That was the touchdown pass to Darnell Washington. At that point, we're up 10-0. Stetson Bennett is 9 of 11 for 131 yards and a touchdown. We were doing to them exactly for a quarter. We did to them exactly what we've been doing to everyone all year, right? And
Correct.
then the game completely changed on the long touchdown pass on the very next drive, which at that point, again, we're up 10-0. It's 3rd and 2. Bama is on their 33-yard line and, 67-yard touchdown pass to Williams on a completely blown coverage. And then I think we went like 3 and out or 4 and out or something. Next drive, they score again. And like at that point, I would say we didn't panic right then. Like then we still stayed in the game, right? So Bama scores 17 straight, but then we answer, right? So we answer to tie the game at 17 on the 97-yard touchdown drive, right? I mean that was incredible. We drive 97 yards, score. That was the drive that ended in a Ladd McConkey touchdown. Um, and so again, so to that point, like we had given up, we gave up the one huge pass play. We didn't stop the bleeding, but we scored, to match them and even things out. And then, the defense from there, I would say from that point on, did play better. So if you fall on the fumble, Devontae Wyatt causes a fumble, and we were trying to pick it up instead of falling on it. Bryson gets it back. Completely changed the game. I mean, so really, there's three things that you got to point to. One is the first long touchdown pass obviously changed the game because again, to that point, we were doing what we did to everybody. It looked like a normal Georgia game, although we've seen all season, right? They had the long touchdown pass. Then we could, we would be going into the halftime tied 17-17 if we fall in the fumble, worst case, right? And instead of that, Bama gets a 2 for none, right? So they score, half is over, they get the ball second half, they score again, boom, we're down 14. And then that's where it felt like, and we talked about this in the preview, that I said last year when we played Alabama, I felt like it was Munson. It felt like it was Munkin's worst game as a Georgia play caller, that he panicked in that game, but I did not expect him to do that in this game. I'm not going to say this was anywhere nearly as bad as what we did last year, although we ended up with the same result. But I feel like there was a point where we kind of got back to what was working early, and then shocking, that's when we started, or when we scored again to get that last touchdown, and the offense was at least moving at that point. So I don't know, very very frustrating, and just very. I mean, the things that we saw were just uncharacteristic, right? Just uncharacteristic, especially in the defense.
Yeah.
But even on the offense, like no one was on the same page. Like how many times did you see Stetson Bennett signaling to a teammate or to the sideline? Like you could see him motioning with his arms, like you ran the wrong route. You were supposed to, break off shorter, or he's yelling at the sideline. He's throwing the ball outside and the route is too deep and he's throwing it more shallow. Like there was a lot of not being on the same page. So I don't know what to attribute that to. Were we doing different things? That like had we opened up the playbook more and they're doing things that it didn't feel like it, but things that they weren't used to doing or trying to do too much. I don't know. It was definitely weird. It was like not we weren't watching the same team. That's what it felt like, you know.
Well, we talked about this, and I know that I mentioned it in passing with friends and you know people that I talked to about the game personally, like outside of the podcast. But um, they we always said Alabama had to play a perfect game, and we
Yeah.
had to play our absolute worst game. That is exactly what happened.
Yeah.
That's the only way that on paper everything aligned up, and hats off to Alabama's coaching staff. They outcoached our staff 100%.
Yep.
This in my opinion, this falls on the coaching staff. Um, it just didn't feel like that we were clicking on all cylinders, at all. There was that game we had against, I think it was South Carolina, where Kirby came out. I don't know what he said prior to this game, if he had a similar statement or not, but like
Yeah.
it just looked like that they were not ready.
Well,
Th-
I would say it looked like they were ready the first quarter, but then like once we got behind, it was like, oh, what are we gonna do now? I don't
well,
know.
and that's literally everybody's worst fear for this entire season was like, what are we going to do when we've got to come from behind?
Yeah.
And well, what happened is we threw interceptions and turned the ball over
Yep.
multiple times. On the turnover sheet, it says 2-0, but really, we were really -4 because we turned the ball over on downs a couple of
Mhm.
times.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah.
you mentioned it earlier. You mentioned Bryce Young's fumble recovery. Like, if you go back and look, like I think I was messaging people, like, the is it weird that the play of the game was a fumble recovery by the quarterback?
By
Like,
like by the guy who's going to win the Heisman too.
by
By the
the guy
way,
who's going to win the Heisman? Yeah,
yeah, because we debated if he had a Heisman moment against Auburn. He definitely had it against us.
he definitely had it against us. He was on
uh,
fire. He was lighting it up. I mean, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out, right? Like, I think we're favored in. I think Alabama is favored by 2 scores, and we're favored by 1 score.
yeah,
In the college football playoff, which I know we'll talk about. But like, it'll be interesting to see what happens if we were to get into a rematch situation with these guys, because, um, you know, John Mechie is out,
yeah,
which, in my opinion, completely changed the second half. By the time that he was gone, I think the game was pretty well out of hand based on everything that we had seen to that point.
yeah.
But if you were to go back and start over, I mean, there are multiple scenarios where, like, without him, I don't think Williams was as effective. And Gary Danielson, even mentioned it. And I know everybody likes to crap on Danielson. I thought he called a great game.
Mm,
Um, he was on the money on just about everything. Um,
yeah,
he mentioned that the fact that the reason Williams works so well is because Mechie's on the field. They're a dynamic duo. When Mechie came off, Williams wasn't nearly as effective. And, you know, granted, like I said, we were coming from behind at that point anyway, so they didn't necessarily have to be. The player of the game for Alabama outside of Bryce Young has to be Robinson. Has to be Brian Robinson Jr. I mean,
yeah,
all the talk in the parking lot, all the talk pregame was just assuming that he was not going to play. Like, we basically were surprised to see him on the field,
yeah,
and the guy was the leading rusher in the game.
yeah. And he didn't have a ton of yards, but they were important yards. You know.
Yeah, I mean, there were important yards. I mean, he was there from a blocking perspective. We struggled with him just in, period. Um, I don't know, man. I guess we need to kind of finish on the offense, and then we can kind of go to the defense and dissect that a little bit. But like,
Yeah, yeah.
there's not much
Well,
else I can say other than AD Mitchell has got to figure out how to catch the ball when it's hitting him in the hands.
yeah, that there was definitely a drive that ended on a drop to him. Again, it seemed like he wasn't on the same page with Stetson because I know Danielson pointed out that they kind of got on AD a little fast. So I think they weren't again they weren't on the same page. I know we spent a lot of time kind of like bagging on what went wrong. I do want to call out the touchdown to Lad McConkey was just like an incredible play design. So got a tip of the hat to Monken on that one. We saw the James Cook shift out of the backfield to wide receiver, like we saw against Alabama last year, like we saw against Tennessee this year, and so everyone thinks, oh, we're going to go to Cook, but a corner went with Cook, not a linebacker. And so instead, we throw that little bubble screen to Ladd, and the blocking was amazing. So that was an incredible call. Um, but Stetson Bennett. I don't know the way we want to say this for the end, but he's not. He's not a. All right, he is not capable of putting the team on his back to lead us to victory. He needs help, and he didn't get the help he needs. So I know everyone wants to, dog on Stetson and blame this on Stetson and where is JT. Honestly, I don't think if everyone else plays the same game around JT as they played around Stetson, and that extends to the entire team, defense and special teams, not just offense. If everyone plays the same game, I don't think it makes a difference. Personally, that's my opinion. Anyway,
Yeah, we'll get to the defense, but like I said, the one turnover that Stetson had, where Brock stopped his route short, was,
yeah,
you could put that on Brock, you can put it on Stetson. I mean, frankly, he's trying to push it into a small window, so I would shade it to Stetson, but he should have had a pick six basically to start the game.
yes, yes. I think it was the fourth play of the game. Should have been a pick six, and the guy dropped it.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then he threw basically a similar ball. He threw a similar ball into a dangerous spot for the pick six. You can't do those. You can't do those things. So
Yep.
Stetson's decision making execution was definitely suspect. But again, he does need some support around him when Brock Bowers is the only guy that's truly stepping up. I thought the offensive line did okay.
I thought they had a pretty good game. I know we talked about Erickson ahead of time, and we were curious, like, would there be any shifts? And really, the only shift was we did get Salyer back, right? And he started at left tackle instead of Jones. And Jones, there was no other shifting. I thought they did pretty well. I mean, Stetson was under some duress, but I thought the line held up pretty well.
Yeah.
I will say on Stetson, like you mentioned, his decision making. I think one of the key ones for me was he didn't run enough. He didn't tuck the ball
That's
and
true.
run on design passing plays enough. In fact, on the second drive of the game, where we ended up kicking a field goal, Stetson took a sack on third down, and then thankfully Jack Pod still nailed that field goal. He could have run for the first down. He hung in the pocket. There was no containment on the left side. The left side of the field was wide open. He could have at least gotten the first down. So there were a couple of times where it felt like he should have taken off and run. I know there was another one, I don't remember when this was, but where there was like a rollout to the right, and he could have just run, and instead he kept his eyes downfield and threw it, and it was incomplete. Just run.
I believe that was the series that we had that eventually we went for it. So it would have set up a third and short as opposed to a third and long, with the potential to have a much shorter conversion attempt. Which, frankly, let's talk about that. Like, our third down conversion success was 3 of 12, I think it was.
Yeah, I think sounds right.
Which is just abysmal from a season standpoint. Like, that was not the Georgia offense that we were used to seeing. Yeah, we were 3 of 12. Alabama was 7 of 14.
Yep.
So they converted their opportunities, and we did not. Yeah. I mean, like I said, the turnovers were the biggest hindrances on here. The inability of the offense to keep rolling when it needed to was another huge problem. Having to go for it on fourth down, which I think at least one of those was not good. I think we should have taken the points personally.
Yep.
Yeah,
that was late in the third quarter where we did that. And that third quarter was brutal. Because it was in that third quarter where we had like the defense actually after the first drive, the defense started getting stops and the offense was doing nothing. to help them.
We didn't do anything
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Um, it was not good. I mean, it was all it was all fairly it was all fairly even. Um, I mean, if you look at it, like we had more first downs than they did, 30 to 25. We had 449 yards total yards. They had 536. Um, you know, fairly evenish.
Mm.
I mean, I feel like I feel like we had enough yards to potentially win, but when you throw a pick six and you give up turnover on downs, you throw two interceptions. Like I honestly think that like this could have been a lot worse, like a lot worse.
It could have, but also like you can look at the plays that were there to be made to make it a lot better, right? I mean, it
Okay,
again, like it could have been tied at the half,
let's.
all that kind of stuff. And then if you want to transition to the defense, like if they don't play the
No,
worst game,
I'm going. I am going to do. I'm going to say one more thing on Stetson's decision making. There were definitely other options than the interceptions and bad throws that he made.
yeah,
There was on the pick six. On the pick six, I had to rewatch it. My wife was making fun of me. I don't know if she posted about it. Like I was rewatching it and she was in there, and I must have rewound it like 4 or 5 times. Carter was like, "Dad, what are you looking for?" I was like, "I'm trying to see what the heck he was doing."
on the pick six.
On the pick six. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, well,
yeah.
he misread the safety. He
Well, so that's what I'm saying. So he misread the safety, which means that he had single coverage on the top of the screen. So like I can't remember who it was that was breaking open. I believe it was Lad. I think Lad McConkey was had he have seen that guy coming down, like if he had like pump faked it and let that guy come crashing down and then just thrown a nice lofted ball out to the boundary, he would have had Lad McConkey like in stride, like walking into the end zone kind of situation. Because Lad, if you go back and look at that play, he is breaking open just as Stetson lets that ball go.
mm-hmm. Okay, gotcha.
Um, but like I said, there's that. I believe that there's on the interception of Bowers, another one of our wide receivers is breaking open over the middle in the back of the end zone that would have been a touchdown. Um, like I said, there definitely was some missed opportunities from a decision making standpoint, but as a team, they definitely had opportunities that they just didn't capitalize on.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about
Uh,
the defense
yes,
because a couple
let's talk
things
about the defense.
stood out. So first thing, we had some questions around like kind of around rotation at the secondary and what we expected there. So Chris Smith played but did not start, and he definitely did not look like his normal self when he did play. Um, so the starting secondary. So we opened up in nickel coverage, and our five defensive backs were Ringo, Kendrick, Scene, Dan Jackson, and William Poole. So that was a starting five. And then there was some rotation there. Um, Obviously, Chris Smith did come and play some deep safety. Um, the so that first long touchdown pass, was an absolute coverage bust. So that was not, what they did is not what was called. I will say Aaron Murray actually explained on punt and pass what should have happened, and he said basically like there's a corner, and I can't remember whether it was either Kendrick or Ringo messed up, where they were supposed to peel off and become the deep safety. That's the way that coverage is supposed to work, and they didn't. And so basically, they should have been pretty close to Williamson right after he caught the ball. So he said it should have been about a 15 to 20-yard gain, but instead, the only guy back there was Christopher Smith, and he should not have been back there alone. So that was a busted coverage. And I think, we were texting right during the game, and it was like, all right, well, like we knew we weren't going to hold this offense to nothing. Let's just let that be the one, right? If that's the only busted coverage we have, we gave it up. Now let's fix it. We didn't fix it. Like it kept happening. And we talked about everything that we feared could happen or could go wrong did. Like we had talked about their bunch formation. It was a nightmare for us. And then we talked about, how do you counter it? What do you do? And pressure, when we said pressure is the great equalizer, and we had 0 sacks. Unfortunately, our friend number 74 didn't step on the field. They made some offensive line changes. They had I believe it was a new center and new right tackle as compared to the Auburn game. I texted one of my Bama friend buddies, and first off, he was expecting to lose, and I told him that he lied to me. So, but anyway,
I know that he's probably not alone because there's
yeah,
multiple Bama people who were like, I did not expect that. Where's this team been all season long?
yeah. So he said that the right side of the offensive line has been musical chairs all year. And it
Mm-hmm.
seems like they finally figured it out. I guess I don't know,
Seriously.
but yeah, I don't know. So those were my initial thoughts.
So I'll add to the busted coverages. So one of the things that I was incredibly frustrated with was the amount of respect that we were giving the speed of Alabama's receivers. Gary
Mm.
Danielson talked about it on the series just before halftime when Bryce Young was in the 1 minute and a half drill or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a pass play that went for a first down, and we literally had our cornerbacks off of the receivers. I think I don't remember who ended up catching it. It was one of the I think want to say it was Bolden maybe, but he ended up catching this ball for a first down, and it's because our defenders are 10 12 yards off the line of scrimmage, giving them a 10 12 yard cushion. So like, I mean, there were multiple situations like that that happened to us on offense where I was like, just throw it to the guy that has 12-yard cushion. That's exactly what
right,
Bama did. Is they threw it to the
right.
guy that had a 12-yard cushion, and he ran for a first down, and then they went and scored. The other thing that happened that we talked about on the preview was, man, if we lose contain on this guy, he's going to backyard
Mm.
football you to death. And
Yeah.
there's one play in particular. Well, not even just lose contain, but like you've got to get him to the ground. We got to him at least 3 or 4 times, and we were not able
Mm.
to tackle him. And he
Yep.
busted loose. He
Yep.
got free. He stepped up. And there was one where we were literally got to him while he was running, and he just pitched it out to Robinson. Like,
Dude,
are you kidding me?
that was amazing. Like you have to appreciate that play. I mean, I can't believe he did that. I
I
still
mean,
can't believe he did that.
so
It was incredible.
so here's something that I would like to take into the playoff is, you know, if we see these guys again, obviously we have a big game against Michigan, which I know we'll talk about, but let's say, we're destined for a rematch based on what Vegas thinks. Um, some of his decisions that he made were risky, right? So like
Mm-hmm.
that type of play in a
The
different
pitch,
scenario
right?
could
Yeah.
potentially lead to a disastrous outcome.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's something that I think that will be interesting moving forward because I was shocked that we didn't get a single sack on him. If you again playing like the devil's advocate on the defensive side, if you had told me before the game that we were going to get 0 sacks on him,
Yeah.
I would predict that this probably would be 0 sacks and 0 interceptions.
Yeah.
He's going to kill us, and he killed us.
Yeah.
I think we started dialing up pressure like later on, particularly since Mechie left the game, like, and it started
Mm-hmm.
working. So like, I don't know, man. We didn't blitz him enough. I thought that we were going to blitz him all day long. I frankly thought that we got a lot of pressure as I was rewatching it in a much more sober situation. Um, I actually thought that we got a pretty decent push on these guys. Like, yeah, we gave up big plays. Ringo got burned, technically twice, I guess, but um, he got burned on the long pass play that was like a double move, which I think was probably the worst double move I've ever seen. But the
that was
guy has
the
just
that was the opening drive of the second half, right? That was the 2-for-1, I believe.
right,
Okay.
right. So he got burned on that, but like he didn't have any help over the top. Like I if you'd have told me that he was going to get burned like that, like golly, dude, like I never would have anticipated that we were going to have the top blown off of us the way that it was with no sacks. Like
Yeah, I mean,
he had forever.
that's the thing, right? Like you tell me that Alabama's going to win the game. I mean, I wouldn't have been shocked. I mean, right? I mean, it's Alabama, and I will say, like, the one thing I said was I did say they were not going to look anything like they looked against Auburn. So I fully expected them to look better. What's surprising to me is that we were able to shut them down for a quarter. Like I was thinking it was going to be more like what happened with Tennessee, and that like they were going to come out and do something like they've made some changes, they figured some stuff out. It's Saban, right? I thought they were going to march down the field and score on us right away. Honestly, that's what I thought was going to happen, and then I thought we would be able to adjust and settle in, and then the fact that it was the opposite, that we pretty much shut them down for a quarter, and then they exploded, and then we never figured it out. That is shocking to me. Like I never would have predicted that, and I'm still surprised that it happened. My irrational fan conspiracy theory on that one during the game was the game plan looks like Dan Lanning spent the week interviewing. uh, he may have, but he's not. There was a lot of like, well, he clearly took the Oklahoma job. He didn't, so he's not going to Oklahoma. Whatever. That's me just making fun of myself and saying I'm admitting some of my irrationalness during the game. But like, game plan did not really make sense to me. And I felt like we didn't adjust the way we usually do. And if you give Bryce Young all day to throw, which I agree, we got some pressure eventually, and yes, we did get to him, but like you said, we couldn't get him down. For the most part, I mean, dude had all day. You can't give that guy all day.
No, he had all day. And then, there's a couple other little things like this was probably our worst tackling performance of the season from a defensive perspective. I mean, most of the season, you like our team's opportunities to bring the quarterback down in the open field, but Bryce literally did a DeAndre Swift dead leg and sent one of our guys' broken ankles to the ground. That was incredibly frustrating, and then he gets a first down.
Well,
But then we had a fumble. I get it, we had a fumble,
yeah,
but like
the
at the
same
same
play.
time,
Same play.
at the same time, it happened.
Yeah, yeah.
The other thing
And
that
it
I
was
thought
the
was
guy whose ankles were broken that got back up and caused the fumble. So we got to give it was Wyatt. I mean, Wyatt got juked out of his shoes, but to his credit, got back up, ran him down, and caused the fumble. So we got to give the full picture on that play.
sure. Well, speaking of falling down, there was a couple of scenarios like that where our guys were slipping all over the field. I don't
Yeah.
understand. I don't understand that. Like there was it Dan Jackson? There was a completion that Bryce Young had to the boundary. I believe it was to Mitchie. I think it was to Mitchie, where like he literally lofted it right in between both of our defenders, and it was right after Dan Jackson had fallen down, and he got up and almost made the play, but Bryce dropped it right exactly where he needed to, and just took advantage of the fact that he had slipped. Basically, had he not
Yeah.
slipped, it's a pass breakup. But it ended up being a long first down and a huge catch, and again, another momentum swinger for them.
Yeah, and I
Yeah,
think I think we do have to talk about, or at least mention, like how good Williams and Mechie are. I mean, those guys are incredible, and we don't have anyone like them. Not at receiver. I mean, we have one. We have Brock. We just have Brock Bowers, right? So we have Brock Bowers. We've got a dude. They've got two dudes that can catch the ball.
well,
Unfortunately, and I think that's a big difference in the game.
yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I mean, you wonder like what happened. Like what happened to Kyrus? What happened to
Mm.
Burton? These guys have been hurt. How hurt are they? How healthy are they? I don't know. I mean, they
Yeah.
definitely have been disappeared, but like we never would have expected them to be non-factors in the SEC championship game preseason. Um,
Right. Right. Yeah, I mean,
Pickens. I think
Karras just
Pickens. I think
re-injured
is
his rib or whatever, right, against Tech. So I don't know.
right.
I gotta figure he's not 100%. So
Yeah. Well, if he's not 100%, I mean, I think at this point, like, unless they're just spelling, unless they're giving guys breathers, like, I don't know that it's kind of like the same kind of scenario on the running back carousel. Let's
mhm.
just let's just stick with guys and run with them.
Yeah, yeah. I don't.
I mean,
These are the kind of things that I feel like we were kind of nitpicking on during the season. Like, why do we rotate so much? These kinds of things. Like, we're winning, we're 12-0. It's like whatever. Um, like anything that you would tend to nitpick on during the season did kind of come to back to bite us in this one. So
Yeah, yeah. Do you how did you feel about the play calling on the defensive side?
yeah, I mean I didn't think it made sense. I mean and so okay, I'm not as astute on this, but I will basically say like we're obviously big fans of Dog Sports Live with Graham and Josh, and they kind of laid out the plan of what they assumed we would do in their preview show, and we didn't do that. um, so, and I was expecting us to. So, and we didn't do like what Auburn did, basically, right? So I don't know. I didn't think it made sense. But again, I don't know. Like we were maybe a little bit handicapped by who was able to go. Um, Smith obviously was not 100%. Brini didn't play a down. So, we don't really know what's going on there. So I don't know. Like, who knows there? Again, like, ifs and buts, but still can't help but wonder what we would be like if we had Tyke Smith. But that's neither here nor there. So I didn't like the game plan. But I mean, overall, like, I know like everyone was like so in their feelings Saturday. Um, this hard loss didn't hurt me that bad, and I know I feel like I was kind of the lone person when we were texting after the game and stuff that kind of felt that way. I'll say too, Kim was actually like, she was kind of like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "You know what? Like, we're still gonna be in the playoff. It's okay." Um, and she was kind of like flummoxed by the fact that I think she actually took the loss harder than I did, which is not usually there. I was just like, you know what, whatever. We were both going to be in the playoff anyway. It's just going to change the seed. So we're going to play a different team probably in the first round, but in the grand scheme of things, I don't think it really changes anything. And I think it's a function of the way this system works right now. The SEC championship was basically relegated to essentially an exhibition that would determine playoff seeding. The outcome had zero bearing on who was going to be in the playoff. And if you don't like that, you better get used to it because it's going to be even more so the case when the playoff expands further.
It's gonna get
So,
even worse.
so I wasn't. I mean, you know what? I was like, you know what? It's hard to beat a team twice. If we're going to lose, if we're going to play Bama twice, which again we got when we preview Michigan, we're going to talk about Alabama 0 times. I'm going to tell you that right now. Because we've got to focus on. There is no rematch if you don't beat Michigan. But right now we are talking about Alabama, so we can say that. If you got to go through those guys twice, it's hard to beat a team twice. And I've seen some people say Georgia picked a bad game to have their hiccup and have a horrible game. I'd argue we picked a great game to have a hiccup and have a horrible game. Because you know what? It didn't matter. I'm sorry, but it didn't matter. We're in the Final Four. We are one of 4 teams that are still alive. All these other teams, they can't win the national championship. We can, and that is the goal. That is the singular goal in today's college football.
Yeah, I'm. I'm just looking forward to. It just frustrates. It just frustrates me that the SEC championship didn't mean more. Like, what happens if Oklahoma State wins?
So if that was the thing. Now, so if Oklahoma State had won, honestly, I think Cincinnati gets left out of the playoff. I think that's the only thing that changes. My opinion. I could be wrong. I could be wrong.
Okay.
I think Oklahoma gets in at number 4, and we still stay at 3.
Okay.
Based on what they did, I think that's what would have happened.
Part of me wishes that would happen so that I could have my neighbor would have been complaining. I feel like I'm the only person in our group of friends that has like Michigan fans, Cincinnati fans, Alabama fans. Like, I'm hearing it left and right. Tech fans, like all of them are just piling on. I need more Georgia folks in my life, I guess.
Yeah, seriously. I was reminded. I had forgotten. I do have a Michigan friend. He's not like super diehard though, but I do. He and yes, that I've already received a text. So It's
So
starting.
we dissected the game. We've gotten this far. We probably should talk about pregame because I ended up going down to the tailgate at the stadium. That was that was fun. A game aside, everything was great at the tailgate down there. Greg and those guys had a tailgate set up. It
Yeah.
was super fun. Really enjoyed myself. My wife, brother-in-law, and sister-in-law and I, we went down there and had fun. It was great until obviously it got out of hand. Um,
Yeah.
and uh, so I rewatched all the game on Sunday, but I
Well,
definitely
just to be
missed.
clear, you watched like from the tailgate, right? Because you guys did not secure tickets, so you
We
watched
did
from
not
outside the
secure.
stadium.
We
Okay.
did not
Yep.
secure tickets. We watched outside the stadium, which was also interesting in and of itself, just for a number of things. Um, I feel like the Gulch where we were tailgating at, like there's obviously trains that run through there. I feel like every time a train came through, it messed with all the TVs in the entire parking lot.
That's funny. That's funny.
Because there's like multiple times where like it would cut out, and you're looking over, like where's the TV on the other side? So I didn't necessarily miss anything, but like it certainly wasn't ideal. But there's nothing anybody could have done about it. Um, but yeah, it was fun. We had a good time. Made some new friends. We had some laughs, and then post game, like I'm not afraid to admit it. Like we definitely left before it hit double zeros or triple zeros or whatever. Because I'd been in the parking lot when we lost to Alabama in 2012, and I knew that obviously the score was out of hand. It wasn't like a last minute play or anything like that, and so we wanted to get to
Yep.
Marta and get to dinner early. So I definitely watched a little bit of it back at the hotel, but um, it was not ideal. It was not ideal from a winning standpoint. So went home, got cleaned up, and then we went to dinner, and we had a blast afterwards and had a fun time. So it was still a good experience. It was still a lot of fun, but definitely didn't end the way that we had originally hoped.
Yeah, I ended up having a good time afterwards as well. So something I didn't say in the pregame because it was a surprise for my friend. So my buddy's wife was throwing him
Ah,
a surprise 50th birthday party. So there was like a comedy bus tour, which we had to skip the tour because the tour started during the game. So we missed that. But then it was on to a brewery afterwards. So we were able to meet up with everyone at the brewery afterwards. We Ubered there and then Ubered home at the end of the night so that we didn't have to have any concerns and could just enjoy ourselves. And we did. So I had a great time with a bunch of friends. Of course, everyone opened with like, sorry for your loss jokes and things like that. But you know what? Like I was saying the same thing that night. Like everyone was kind of like, you seem way more okay than you usually are after Georgia loses. I was like, man, we're in the playoffs. Like we're still alive. Like not many people can say that. And so I had one guy that was like, oh no, you guys are done. I was like, okay, we'll see. And I was like, Bama 1, Michigan 2, Georgia 3, Cincinnati 4. And he was like, no way, that's not going to be it. So, Todd, I was right. Boom. Anyway.
boom, roasted.
uh, so,
Yeah,
although I
yeah.
changed it, I changed my mind. Sunday morning, I convinced myself that we were actually going to be number 2. But obviously, I should have stuck with my Saturday night prediction because I had it right on Saturday. Anyway.
Yeah, it's definitely an uncomfortable feeling. I mean, obviously, it's good to be in this position to like. I guess if you're gonna overcome Alabama, the best way to overcome Alabama is to not win your conference and to win the national championship. That
Look,
would be.
you can't out Bama until you backdoor into the playoff without winning the SEC, right? I mean, people always try to say we're trying to copy their model. Well, I mean, yeah, like, seems to work.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
uh,
It'll be interesting. I'm looking forward to playing Michigan. There's a buddy of mine that I've known for like 15, 16 years, and he's from Michigan. He's a big Michigan fan. Yeah, I think he's living in Georgia now. I think they just moved. They were talking about moving down here. But he was texting me. He was like, "Hey man, we finally get to play each other. Like we've always
yeah,
talked for years about like, are we ever going to get a chance to play each other?" Well, here we are on the biggest stage, and I think that their program is kind of similar to Harbaugh's got a fairly similar ish record without nearly as much silverware or opportunities for silverware. So it'll be interesting. Two coaches that are going to be very motivated to get to the next level. And I personally hope that we destroy them. we need to
right.
come out. We need to come out angry.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's housekeeping on that. I don't know. We'll obviously do a Orange Bowl because we do know that the game is the Orange Bowl against Michigan. It's the primetime game, New Year's Eve. So we will have an episode to preview Michigan. I don't know that we'll have anything between then and now. I mean, if we do, whatever. If you're subscribed, you'll pick it up. So I guess it doesn't so much matter. But for sure, we'll at the minimum, we'll be back with our Michigan preview. Sometime the week of the game. Give everyone enough time because that game is on a Friday. So John, we have to think about that when we record because I want to make sure we get out the episode in time. Ahead of the game, so we'll see what we do there. But that's a great reason to plug and remember to subscribe. We're available, wherever you get your podcasts. So definitely subscribe, and then you don't have to worry about those kinds of things.
Yeah, that will be interesting playing on a Friday. I didn't even realize that. I hadn't looked ahead, looking at the timing just yet.
And also warning for everyone. You need to check your New Year's Eve plans because the game kicks off at 7:30 p.m. on New Year's Eve. So make sure you're aware of that. Make sure your significant other is aware of that.
Yikes.
The game is going to be happening in the middle of your New Year's Eve party. Unless maybe your New Year's Eve party is going to the game. So I'm sure there's plenty of people that are going to be going.
I imagine
just be aware.
I imagine there's going to be some killer New Year's Eve parties in the state of Georgia.
Yeah. So,
there's a potential you could have a ball drop right at the end of the game.
Yes. Yeah. Man, that would be a really long game. But with the playoff, I wouldn't put it past it. It's possible.
For sure.
Cool. All right, man. You got anything else? I don't want to dwell on it anymore. I kind of feel like it. You know what? It is what it is. I wanted to get over the hump. Obviously, felt like we had all the talk. Like it's got to be Bama, and like we're going to do this and get through them. And it hurts. It hurts. It does. It hurts that didn't happen. But I'm glad that it hurts and happened the way it did. I mean, 12-0 still means something, right? Because we're still alive. So.
Yes.
And you know what? One thing I got to add, I did listen to the Bulldog Brunch, and even the 85 Bears didn't go undefeated. So Kevin Butler pointed that out. So anyway.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. I definitely would prefer to be in this situation than to be sitting at home like some people down in Florida.
Yes. Agreed.
That's all I got, man.
All right.
I don't know what else to say. I sent you a mock-up of an old Louis Grizzard article from a Georgia Tech Georgia game that we had lost, and he had submitted this article to the AJC, and literally all it had was, "Frankly, I don't want to talk about it." That's how I felt Saturday night. I came to my senses. You talked me off the ledge on Sunday. You're like, at some point we're gonna have to talk about it. I was like, all right, I'll talk about it, but I'm not ready to talk about it publicly yet.
I did say that. Insight into the text messages between just the two of us.
Yeah. Frankly, I don't want to talk about it. But we did. We did it, and I think that we're all. I think we all recognized what went wrong. I really hope the coaching staff did too, because we've got a couple of big games potentially still ahead of us. We're still alive.
Yeah, still alive. The national championship is the goal, and we are still in the hunt. And there are only 3 other teams that can say that. So with that,
Amen.
Go Dogs.
Go Dogs.